how you can create your own original character design, an art course. Before we begin, this art course event is part of my current education. The planning, making, and execution of this event is a criteria to pass my current elective event management. If you want to help me make an even better assignment, then follow the first link in the description box below to participate in my survey. This survey is made with you, the viewer, in mind, and by answering it, you will help me round off my assignment with real-world data to add to it. 24 hours after this premiere, if you have filled out my survey, you'll receive a freebie in your inbox as a thank you. Thank you in advance, and I hope you enjoy this art course. Note, you must be above the age of 18 years of age to participate in this survey. Throughout this event, I will be taking screenshots and video recordings of both video and the chat to use for my assignment. Jasmin Phillippa Würtz, your host and instructor. Hi, and welcome to my art course, how you can create your own original character design. My name is Jazmin Phillippa Würtz, and I will both be your host and your instructor in this art course. When I'm not doing art and I'm not writing my modern fantasy middle grade book series, I'm a student, and this particular event is part of our current elective in event management. So before we get into it, there's a few details I would like to get out of the way first. For the next 24 hours, this event will be free to watch right here on my YouTube channel, and together with the survey, you will be able to fill it out for the duration of this period. I'm not sponsored by any of the products, the brands, or the artists that I mentioned in this art course. What I'm showing you is genuinely what I like to use and get inspired by when I do my own art. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Welcome to my art space. Before we begin, I want you to take just a second to look around your room. Look to your right, look to your left, and look just at where you're sitting and what your environment is like. For me, my environment when I do art is hugely important to me. It's so important that I have prints, posters, stickers, inks, not only readily available, but there to keep pumping me up with awesome inspiration and awesome creative energy. The space where I do my art doesn't always look the same. This is what it looks like right now. I have some of my favorite posters, I have some of my favorite prints, stickers, all that jazz, whatever I love and am in love with right now. So when I feel like a poster or a sticker has served its time, then I'm gonna go and find something new and then just switch it out. Just making sure my space is dynamic and also fluent, because I evolve in my art and I make different things, which means that my style and my preference will change. So when I feel like, let's say, this poster didn't give me the same oomph of dope creative energy anymore, I will take it down, find another one to replace it with, and hang that up on my wall. If you have a space where you create art, or you want to create a space where you can sit down, the only thing you do there is create art, and you don't have to clean up after yourself always, that's a huge thing for me. This space, I can sit down, I can use all the paints and inks and tools I like, because this space is for me. This space is so important to me, and I would recommend that you try to make your own space, or even if you already have a space like this, try to update it every once in a while. Within your time, means, and of course the space that you got. Collect prints. It could be pictures you like out of your favorite magazines. Go ahead and rip them out. put them in a cool frame. You may have thrifted recently. Go and find your favorite figures, your figurines. I have figurines and different toys on my desk at all times because that inspires me. So go out, try to find what really inspires you, and then collect it in your own little art space. A space that you can call your own and where you can cultivate your art. And when you sit down in this particular space, your brain tells you and your subconscious knows, this is where we do art. This is where we do cool, dope stuff. Because art is not just creating with your hands and your mind and your eyes, it's also what you take in your peripheral vision. At least that is what it's like for me. Even when I don't art, my brain is still working on different terms and principles that I know and have learned or want to know. So go find some cool stuff that you really love and just take it all in. Arrange it in a cool order that you really like and even love. As we move on to the next lesson, we will move to my desk and I will show you a few of my current favorite things. I spend the most of my time and energy in my creative surroundings. That's why I need them to be inspiring to me every day and all the time. If I have a poster or a print I feel like have served its time, I take it down and then I replace it with something that I love right now and that inspires me right now at this moment. And then I save my prints or drawings or whatever that may be in an inspiring scrapbook for later viewing pleasures. I have a few things within reach I wanted to share with you that inspire me so much right now. First of all, let's talk about this beautiful, beautiful Magic the Gathering game mat that I was gifted by one of my best friends. This inspires me every day. The art is so gorgeous and so stunning, and I actually have it underneath a plastic protection right here on my desk. Then I want to talk about this figure. This figure is a My Little Pony. I think it's from Friendship is Magic, but I just love this one. It's a little 3D model of Twilight Sparkle, and she has a base just like that. And I love the shapes. I love the shape language, something that I will be getting into later in this course. And I just love it. It's prone to dust. It's a dust capturer, so it needs a little wet cloth every now and again, just because I haven't painted it. So it's ready to paint, and you can get all the girls in the line, or you could at the moment when I bought this Twilight Sparkle. Then I have this print, which I just adore. It's actually not in my art sort of studio space. It's in my office on my desk, and I love this. This is by Maddie Arts, and you can find her on Instagram. She has a Patreon as well, at Maddie_arts. I love this. I honestly wished she had dark hair, because then this print would have just been perfect. The witch hat, I love the tattoos. She has round big glasses just like I have. I love this print. And she makes other gorgeous art. So go check her out. And then the last piece of inspiration right here. I absolutely adore this Just a Labor Critical Role The Mighty Nine Origins comic. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I love the shapes, I love the shape language, I love the line variation and the color. I have a little bit of a color scheme going on with the pinks and the blues and the greens and the purples, but you know, why fix something that ain't broken? So these are a few of my inspirations and absolutely obsessions right now, and I'm pretty sure if you look around on the things that you usually like to consume, watch, read, you will be able to find a few of your own. I think it's very important to mention the tools that I use and give you an insight to what I use to create my own art with. Right now, For the most of my sketching and inking, I use my iPad. This is an 11-inch iPad Pro, and I use my second generation Apple Pencil. Right here, I have the program Procreate going, and that I have tried Photoshop and Sketchbook Pro, a few different drawing programs that I have been all right with, but I like a program and a software that's very intuitive, and I was unsure trying Procreate in the beginning, but when I got to it, it was just so amazing. I usually sketch with a red pencil or a blue pencil, very much like old-fashioned animators did way back when. And I like to sketch with a 6B pencil, and I actually like to sketch with a 6B pencil on my iPad and also in real life. And these are the pencils that I use. These are the Faber-Castell 9000 graphite drawing pencils. I actually don't know the original name, my apologies. I just use them. So these pencils, I don't use all of them, but I do like to have a wide range. So the ones that I like to use is the HB pencil, this one. To the untrained eye, these look the same, but I like to use the HB pencil, and that's why I have a wide collection of this pencil, because at the moment when I bought all of these HB pencils, I invested in all of these because I used them so fast and just so quickly that I thought I needed to stock up. And then I found out by using my iPad and Procreate that it's fantastic to sketch with a broader and more dark pencil. A 6B or a 5B is what I use and I would recommend. But it's just awesome to have a thinner, more sharper pencil as a 4H in the other end of the spectrum as well. So I didn't get these art materials from one day to the other. I really invested and took my time and then found out what I wanted to use, and it's for sure this range of pencils. When it comes to erasers, I am actually not that picky. I like a good eraser, and honestly, these are my favorite. I don't know which brand this is. This has a brush on one end, and it's a pencil eraser, which I just find it's so convenient. It's so easy to use, but you use them up pretty fast. I have a wide variety. I have a Derwent one, Faber-Castell, a little smiley one from my mom. Thanks, Mom. A one without its paper body anymore. I'm not that picky with erasers, and especially not anymore when I do my majority of sketching with pen on paper or on my iPad. So I just need an eraser that works and don't leave too many eraser shavings. But when it comes to pencil sharpeners, let me tell you, this is the one that's my go-to. After having drawn for my entire life and having drawn the majority of that with graphite pencils, I have always had this fight and struggle with finding a really good eraser. And then in a art box, surprise mystery box I got online, this was in it, a Staedtler graphite pencil sharpener. It's very simple, it's pretty heavy, it has some weight to it, but this for me is the absolute perfect eraser. Pencil sharpener. These mechanical pencils have a very special place in my heart. These are Staedtler Triplus Micro 5mm lead mechanical pencils. And this one I've had since I was 18. So that's about 6 or 8 years I've had this one, and it is dying on me, to be honest. So last year I went out on a hunt for the exact same mechanical pencil, and I found one with a bigger lead. It's the same mechanical pencil, but this has a 1.3 millimeter lead. And then I found my holy grail of mechanical pencils, the exact same, but newer, my lovely, lovely mechanical pencils. Back in the day, I would draw a rough sketch and I would clean it up, and then I would draw over it with this particular brand of mechanical pencil. So I honestly don't use it much right now, but it is just a stable member in my most used drawing tool stash. And when it comes to paper, I use different sort of papers and sketchbooks. This one is my preferred one right now when I draw in hand. This is the Graph Book 360 Degrees sketchbook, and I really, really like it. It lays flat on your desk, but when you have gotten to the end of it, it kind of doesn't matter because the spine lays differently on the table anyway. But this is pretty much a better, sturdier sort of printer paper feel to this paper, which is what I really want to draw on. Back in the day, I drew on copy printer paper from my mom's and then my own printer, and I really liked the feel of it. And with the drawing pencils and my mechanical pencil, it just really worked out. So I set out to try to find a sketchbook that felt like printer paper. I don't like the black line down the middle, so I don't do a lot of double spread beautiful pages. And I really wished they had one that was just white, but I really love this one. I'm almost done with it, as you can see, but this is just my go-to. I'm gonna buy one with this when I'm done with this one, when I fill this one out, and I just really, really like this sketchbook. Then I have this one, and I actually have two of these. This one is one that I won on an Instagram contest sort of giveaway situation. This is a Scribble and Dot sketchbook, and I really love this paper. This is so good for the size. Is I want to say an A5 sort of a size. It's really good for character designing and character creation because you are limited by the size of paper. So I usually write a guide, or I write my who's the character, what are they wearing, where they're from, what's their items, that sort of thing on one side. And then on the other side, I sketch out the character, and sometimes I do different iterations on each page. But this paper works perfectly with a pen I actually earlier forgot to mention. This pen, it comes in a variety of colors. I use it in black, but I do like the pink color though. This is a Pilot Friction ball pen in 07 millimeter. And this pen, with this sort of paper, is a match made in heaven. Like, this pen is my holy grail. I sketch with it. I just about to say I painted with it, not quite, but I write with it, and I use it on a daily basis. And when the ink has been used up, I buy new ink cartridges, new replacement fillers, and I just keep on using the same pen. So this has been in my stash for a very, 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 very long time. And this paper, together with the pen, it just works wonders. And this last sketchbook, I like to keep these things on. I don't know if that's unusual, but I like to keep these name tag sort of paper situations on here. This is a Hanemühle. This is a draft and sketchbook for pencil and charcoal, and I like the color of the paper, 140 GSM, and it's really good. I really like this one, and I have actually used it for painting with gouache on it. And this is really nice paper. And if I want to stretch my sketching muscles or my painting muscles and really want to go all out and do something really awesome and creative, this is the sketchbook I use. I like to do big sizes, and this is pretty big. It's a little bit broader than the A4 I just showed you, I would say. And honestly, I like to go even bigger than that. But this particular sketchbook has really nice papers. It lays great on the table as well. And this is for sure also one I will replace when I have filled it up with awesome sketches and art. Now that I've gone through my most used and most beloved drawing and art materials as of right now, I think it's really important to mention that you don't need a lot of fancy, expensive materials to get you started or to, produce art or drawings. Like I said, for the majority of my art journey, up until my 20s, I think I drew on printer paper because it's easier to grab a piece of paper and then draw on it when creativity strikes and you have an idea. And at that time, before my 20s and in my early 20s, I just would have all these ideas and they would just show up, and it was easier to grab a piece of paper. Now I have the scribble and dot one. The green one is for, as much as I can keep it, character design for original characters. And sometimes a stray idea comes in there and I sketch it out in it. I like to keep my graph book. It's just my regular sketchbook. It works as just me grabbing a piece of printer paper version, but in a sketchbook. And then when I want to sit down and take my time, I go to my Hahnemühle sketchbook and use that. And that's both for drafting and sketching and finalizing a sketch and inking it and maybe painting like you just saw. But I think it's really important to say and mention that I used a normal pen from an off-brand, just a normal pencil that probably has been an HB pencil, and that's why I like to use HB pencils, because I would just use a pencil from some sort of pack that I got in a general store, and then I would go home when I wanted to figure out what sort of pencil that was when I ran out, and I would draw with the unbrand, unnamed pencil, and I would draw with my HB pencil, and I found out it was an HB pencil. So I've gone through a lot of different brands as well. Derwent, I use some Faber-Castell. I use with the mechanical pencil and the pencil sharpener. I use Staedtler. I mean, it all comes down to taste and your mood and what you want to make, really. So go grab a random pencil off of your mom's desk and a piece of printed paper if that's where you are. And if you want to go back to basics and you already have established your art journey, go grab a pencil from your mom's desk and a piece of printed paper and just draw it out. Just draw something that you want to make. When it comes to ideas and having a good idea for character design, to me, my ideas come to me very naturally. But I've been a writer for 10 plus years now and an artist all my life. So it feels as easy as walking to me to come up with an idea for just something. Like, I don't tend to, and I try not to very consciously, not to be overly critical about my ideas. Like, if I have an idea of, let's say, a creature and they might be an octopus but also an alien, that could work. But then I also think about, cool, they are an octopus alien, but what quirk do they have? What characterism, what feature makes them stand out? And that could be just about anything. So to me, the principles and the things I'm going to show you in this course, I don't do it as step by step. But if you feel untrained in it, and this is a brave new world, I would suggest and recommend that you do it, take it step by step. And here's a quick tip for you. You can ask a friend or a family member if they could be any fantasy character, what would they be? What would their creature type be? That could be a unicorn or even an alligator. What job would they have? Would they be an alligator merchant who sells clocks? And what would be their one sentimental or unusual item that this character, this alligator clock merchant, would carry around? And if he sells clocks, then maybe he would have an unusually big or unusually small wrench that's very sentimental to him, and he would carry that around. That way you will get ideas and inputs that you wouldn't have thought of, hopefully, and most of the time. And this is just a really fun, I like to do this exercise with my friends and family. This just gets me out of my normal train of thought and gets me into more of a stream of consciousness sort of way of thinking. And it's just really, really fun to see what people come up with. I like to use different resources when I create my characters. I have found, so I played Dungeons and Dragons and have for years now, and I like to think in the same lanes as when I create a new Dungeons and Dragons character. Like, what's their race? It could be the alligator guy. What's his background? So he might sell clocks right now, but where does he come from? So is he a desert alligator, or does he come from some sort of special exotic swamp? And then what does he look like? What sort of, so in D&D you make an adventurer and they usually wear armor, they usually wear some sort of suit get up theme. I like to find the theme of my character. So if this, let's go from, he was once a clock seller, a merchant, and he is going to become an adventurer. So that means that he probably will be wearing some clocks, and that could be a fun design in his armor. And if the alligator is a knight or a healer, then the symbol of his outfit and his symbols could be of a symbol clock. So I like to use my Dungeons and Dragons source books for inspiration and resources when I can't come up with my own ideas. And another resource that I like to use when I just don't know what I want to draw, what I want to create, whether that's writing or drawing or arting just in general, I use these cards. So these are called Reckless Deck. So I got these cards for Christmas one year, and this one is the volume one is the character concept idea generator, and that's what it is. And there's a world environments one, and these are, you could call it expansion packs. So Reckless Deck is a really, really cool resource and item to use if you just don't know what to draw or you want, again, another input from someone beyond yourself. Also, they have art within them, which I find outstandingly cool. Look at that. Super amazing. So what this is it's different cards with different words on them. So these are the costume cards. These are the intrinsic nature cards. So if you want to make a character who has fire abilities, or who's an elf, or who has bird attributes, bird features, etc., you pull some of these cards. Then we have the modifications cards, which can be anything from shell organic exoskeleton or extreme facial hair. And then we also have the weapons cards. So I think this is pretty cool if you wanted to make a samurai, let's say an alligator samurai. So you have your weapon cards, and then you have your accessory cards. So half a mask, a crown, princess, yes, or a scepter. Here you already have a empress, evil queen, whatever you want to make. So there is a normal recommended way for you to use the reckless deck, but honestly, I just like to mix them up in the different categories and then pick. Sometimes I like to use all of these. Sometimes I like to use 2, 3. It all depends on my mood and what I want to create and honestly what I am in the mood for. So here you have a woad or a war paint card. So you mix up your cards and then you pick and then you see if you agree with it. Claws, do you want your character to have claws? You can go through them and pick and know what you pick, or you can pick by random. And I think this is a very, very cool resource. And sometimes I just take them out and look at them. And that's the same. So we have a Lovecraftian expansion here. Civilizations, it goes with the world one. And then we have a dungeon crawler one. I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons. I grew up with old school fantasy. So this is very much like accessory. Here's a torch. This is particularly one of my favorite ones. So I think this is a really, really cool resource if you want to go that route. And I like to use them every now and again if I am stumped for ideas or I just want to get another input. So what does it look like when you create a fantasy character? Well, this is where you start. This is where I start anyway. I start with my favorite pen and this is actually my most used my most used writing paper. I take notes in just this normal squared notepad. And I've already used it to draw your fairy night mother on the back of it. So let's call that a good sign. So I use this sort of paper, just normally the cheapest I could find in my local bookstore. And I use my favorite pen. And then I ask myself a few questions. Who is my main character? So who is he? It's going to be a guy, a male-oriented character. I had prepared a shape, but this is a spur of the moment. I'm actually just going to create this character for you right now. No prep. So he's an alligator dude, and where does he come from? So let's think beyond, where does alligators live? In swampy places is what comes to my mind when I think of alligators. But could it be some sort of other environment that he comes from? Right now, I'm thinking in the terms of where does he come from? That could, in fact, bleed into what his outfit is going to look like and what items he has. I mean, he could be a swampy gator. I mean, that could be fun, but he could also be an alligator who grew up in the city. This is a fantasy character. We can pretty much do fantasy nonsense, whatever we want. So I'm thinking that maybe he comes from a big city, and it could have some body of water. So his alligator parents, they also live here by a body of water. And it's more natural to be an alligator and live by some sort of big area of water. So we have big body of water, and then let's go with a big city. He's a big city gator, and what I'm thinking about, obviously we're making a fantasy character, and I want it to be medieval. We're talking Lord of the Rings, we're talking A Knight's Tale, we're talking Dungeons and Dragons. I like that sort of fantasy medieval-y time. And what's his background? So if we go away from the clock idea from earlier, and think about fantasy, we think about medieval things. and we think about this alligator who has clearly grown up in a big city where, you know, a wide variety of creatures live. So he's not, you know, a one-of-a-kind alligator person who just walks around. I'm thinking also, what would his job be? So it could be a bunch of different things. It could be a failed merchant. He could be a town troublemaker. When you think about where your characters come from, their backgrounds, it's a really good starting off point to where they will be now. So we're creating our now alligator guy. And I'm thinking his background, I think he's mischievous. Let's write out background. I think he's mischievous. I think in his alligator years, he's probably, I don't know how long a normal alligator lives. But let's say, you know, I think he's in his early 20s. So he's a sort of a fun guy. And he likes things to be happening. Like, he don't want to be bored. He doesn't like to waste time or be bored. So the opposite to that is the sort of quick-witted character who's quick on their feet. And here's a quick tip. Write down your visual cues. So here we have an alligator, but what color does the alligator have? We have an alligator, he's gotta have claws, right? I think that's my alligator guy is going to have claws at least. So all of this brainstorming, all of these elements, all these words you come up with when you write down on your piece of paper, you get visual cues whether you know it or not. So when we have fantasy, in our mind's eye, in our visual library, what does that mean to us? We have medieval times. To me, that means bigger stitching in our outfits. And that's just off the top of my head an example. It also means no modern technology, people who use swords and daggers and magic. So with all these words you write down, also write down your visual cues. Like if you have a green alligator, then you know where to go when later we will be making and finding reference pictures for our reference board. So anything that sparks your fancy when you are exploring your character, like no idea is the wrong idea, and I always think it's better to write down more ideas than not having enough ideas, because you can always kill your darlings. You can always pick something up that doesn't quite fit, but it's fun to have a full filled out page where you can just go explore your character. So I will fill this out and be right back. So here we have it. So this is a filled out brainstorm of ideas and notes on our alligator character. And in the speed of the video, you could see how it sort of just grew on its own. I started out where I left you guys earlier. His background, he was mischievous, his early 20s, fun. He doesn't like to waste time or be bored. And I was just thinking about this fun, sassy guy in a medieval big city. What can you do in a big city? And I thought, what if he was a magician? And then performed on the streets and got some coin off of that. And off of that idea, I thought that he was being a street performer. He was doing it to earn his bread on the table, basically. So when he was out trying to make a living off of his skill, he wouldn't have to go back and carry flowers into carts, which he found very taxing and obviously very boring. So if he's a magician, I like the one that's the quote, he never reveals his tricks, obviously, because why would he? And if he is innately magic, if he has magic powers he's born with, then I see no point in him saying that or telling anybody where his magical powers come from. I was thinking purpley colors, I was thinking blue colors, sparkles, that sort of thing, a magic show that sort of like goes poofs. Um, will he be wearing pants? Or will he be wearing no pants? Will he be Donald Ducking it? That's something I will figure out later. And a magician often has an assistant, and I was thinking whether that was going to be a beautiful woman or maybe a pet assistant, which I think also sounds extremely endearing and cute. And maybe he's a outgoing, sassy, a bit too confident character. He could have a cute pet assistant, which sort of, if you go into the background psychology sort of element of it, it shows in his art. He's a sly character, but he has an affectionate side, and to keep a pet or a pet assistant or a pet companion. He likes to impress people. And it could be cool, I think, if he had a hand drawn or handmade sort of logo, so he would have cards he could hand out to people with some sort of logo on it, like that. Or he could use his magic and then make the logo appear in the sky with his magic. So this is a finished brainstorm idea piece of paper. And we have a list of different items, we have a list of different features and traits, and some of his background, some of his characteristics, all connected to this character that I want to make. And with this, we can go on to the next lesson, which is shape language. What shapes are we using for this particular character and why? So starting where we left off, we have our character brainstorm piece of paper, where we have our ideas, our features for our characters, what kind of creature he is, and what he's doing with his life, his day-to-day life. And from that on, we will be talking about shape language. So, what is shape language? And if this is the first time you hear about it, welcome. Shape language is just about any shapes you see out there. The most usual shapes that we see in our day-to-day lives are circles, squares, and triangles. So when we go about our daily business, the first thing that I think of as an example is road signs. I've seen all sort of shapes of road signs, triangles, square ones, and circle ones. And even on logos, on packaging, on art and illustration, the shapes are all around us. And to make a compelling and very nice looking fantasy character and cool art with our fantasy character in them, we will be mixing and using all of the shapes above. So, going over each of them very quickly to give you an idea of how you can use these circles. This shape is one you can use when you want to make a character that is well liked and round in its features, just like a circle, and charming and cute. So when we think of a character who's made of mostly of circles, it could have a big round head and big eyes. Let's have it look off to the side. Maybe a little round nose and a smile. It can have big round ears like that, so maybe it's good at hearing something. And I'm thinking of a little monkey. It sort of looks like a little monkey guy. Oh no, I made a wrong shape. Circles. Here we go. And then he could have a little circly body with a little neck. And his arms doesn't necessarily have to be circle shapes, but they could be sort of round in it. So we have here, and then when we draw his hands, he has little round fingers on him, and maybe is holding a big banana. And when I make bananas, I want to make them sharp like that. But if we want to make a more inviting, sort of cutesy banana, we can still use the shape of the actual banana, but we can round out the edges of the banana. And this is the start of how to use shape language. So when we have a character who is made of mostly of circles, I think he's cute. You know, you can comment and let me know if you don't find him cute, but you know, that is the usual usage of circles. He has big eyes and he has a little smile, and his shapes are approaching, like you want to approach this character, and it leaves us with a sense of comfort. And here we have a little circly focused banana monkey guy. And going right on to squares. So when we have a character who is made up of mostly square shapes, we have a character that signals safety. A broad character, it's a sign of protection. When we see something that's square, it usually shows up a square is sturdy. You can't often turn over a square. This sort of character can be trusted, and they have this sort of I got this attitude. So also if you think about a children's drawing of a house, it has a triangle on it, sure, but when you make the house, you can make it pointy as well. But the main shape of this drawing is a square. And then we have a door, and that's also, you know, square, it's a rectangle, and then we have squared little windows for the windows, right? And when we make a character that's square shaped, it could be that their body, his body, her body, is actually square shaped, or it could be the pose this character is in that is squared off. So if we have this character and he's a square guy, and then he has sort of squarish arms and squarish hands, and if you sort of play around with making a square, but you don't want to make a person who seems unapproachable, you can still make him square looking like this, without making it pointy. So that's also something to think about. How sharp do you make a corner or a point or your lines? So we have this guy, and I'm thinking that he could be, let's say if we make him like this and give him a big brow. And no, I'm trying real hard not to draw Wreck-It Ralph. But it's a sort of good example, right? That he could be a chef. All right, we will make a sort of square guy who's a chef. But yeah, Wreck-It Ralph is a really good example of how they took this character who's supposed to be big and imposing and a bit scary, but they made him full of square shapes for the most part, and that made him sturdy and comforting and nice, and just a guy that you want to trust. So this guy is chef, and then he has, let's see, he has a button down like this, and then we will be adding a bit of a squared collar to him, and he can have a squared apron. And just like that, we have our square-based cook. We can call him Eric. This is Eric. And he's broad. I'm not sure I would trust this guy. Just off the bat, he doesn't look particularly nice. But this shows off how, when using square elements or square shapes, also in the negative space, you have a sturdy character. Like, I'm pretty sure that this guy, he has got his cook's job down. Like, he knows what he's doing. And then going off of this shape, we have a pointy triangle, and that's our next and last shape I will be going over, the triangle. So a lot of villains, if you look at it in comic books or illustration art, anime, movies, any animated movies, the villains are supposed to look scary. They're supposed to give us this sense of dread and not to be particularly likable. And in most cases and common used cases, they are made up of triangles and or very sharp shapes. So if you want to, let's say we want to create a more villainy character. So this guy is sturdy, and he got this. And you can trust this guy. You just need to go a bit further and get behind his hard, squarish exterior. And that's also a good characteristic for a squared of shaped character. That there's more to him than just his very square, imposing shape. So with a triangle, it often leaves us with a sense of alertness. So when you look at street signs, at least those I've seen, a triangle means you watch out for what happens next. And it's often paired with a color, right? But color theory is something I'm not going to be covering in this course. So we have a triangle. It's alertness. It's pointy edges sort of makes us uneasy. It's a very human trait and feature. When we see something pointy, we probably don't march towards the pointy shape without giving it a second thought. And then it could also be, so that's sort of the different and the other end of the spectrum, where we have an untrustworthy character with a lot of pointy shapes. And the animal that I'm thinking of, which, it's just an example and it has nothing to do with these these traits that much, but I'm thinking of a hedgehog, right? So when you see a hedgehog on the side of the road or in your garden, they're super cute and they have little pointy noses. But when you look at it, like, you wouldn't want to touch that without gloves on, am I right? I mean, I don't want to touch a hedgehog without gloves on for sure. I mean, I don't really want to touch a hedgehog at all for the chance that I might get poked. So if we want to create a character who is sort of not nice and maybe a villain in a story, we could go with a face that's sort of an upside down triangle like this. We could do it really sharp, but that's up to you and how you want to use your shapes. I'm not going to make it super sharp, but he could have a pointy beard maybe like this. So this is a pointy beard, and maybe he has a bow in his beard that is also super pointy, and the end tufts of hair sort of comes down, also sort of rounded off, but also with pointy edges and sides. And if we want to make, he could be a vampire, so he has sharp ears, or maybe an elf, maybe he's an untrustworthy elf, like that. So we got his ears going on, and then when we make his nose, he could have a turned down nose like that. And again, I'm exaggerating the shapes. I would not make a character only using one particular shape. But this is just illustrating for you what these different shapes mean and how you can use them. And if we want him to be, then we have to do a pointy, hedgehoggy sort of hair, right? Like, I wouldn't be wanting to touch that guy. And then we will give him like sort of pointy eyeballs, and they might be black, he might be looking down. So this guy could be a villain or just an very moody, disagreeable character as well. So this is how you can use them separately, and I've been exaggerating, as I mentioned, these different shapes to show you what they each carry, and how you can use that in the future. When I create fantasy characters, and when I create the designs, I never just use one shape. It gets boring, and it can read as too many pointy edges. It can read boring if you have just too many squared off edges, and not that it can become too cute, but again, if you overuse the same shape, then nothing stands out. So a quick tip. It's rare when you go outside and look at people that a person is only made up of one particular one of these shapes. So go out and go for a walk to the nearest park or the nearest beach and bring your sketchbook. So when you see people walk past you, don't try to draw all the people all at once, but look at the people and then see, okay, so this guy, his face was sort of rounded, but he was wearing a square hat that sort of had a brim on it. Maybe this guy was a farmer. And he had a big body like this. And this way, when you go outside and look at people, you can train your eye, and you can add things to your visual library, the box in your head, in your brain, that helps you when you draw. The more images and knowledge and training you put into your visual box in your brain, your visual library, the better and easier of a time you have at drawing. So if you go out and look, and then this farmer you saw as he walked past you, he has a big broad nose and small tiny arms, and maybe he had big hands because he was wearing gloves. And then all of a sudden, when you put just squares and triangle shapes together, you can create a character you didn't have legit 3 minutes ago. So he could have a rake, and then that's when you can go out, fill your sketchbook, and then go home, and then you can totally go and be wild. So you drew this guy and you think he looked like a farmer, and then you can give him this rake. And what could be fun is if you have long arms, he could have even longer legs and some fun knees. And then to also play off the gloves that we just gave him, big square boots. So even though he has a big body and tiny legs, he has big boots. You know, he's a grounded fellow. He takes care of his farm and his crops and sheep and whatever he has on his farm. And then it did not take me 3 minutes to come up with a different character design. And sometimes you don't have to create the bestest character or the coolest character you can make. Sometimes it's a really great idea for you to practice. Fill several pages with just characters made of different shapes. And then you can come back to it and be like, I want to create a cool vampire from the future who likes steampunk but also 80s sci-fi. And then you can go off and be creative and follow your stream of consciousness and that tangent. So try that next time that you go out somewhere. It could be a family gathering, a trip to the beach. Just look at people. Look at people and get inspired. Sometimes we try so hard to go online and go on social media to be inspired, but all it takes us is to go to the park. Maybe you can draw cool dogs. You can take your dog to the dog park and look at cool dogs, and then when you come home with your dog, you can sit down and draw some fun shapes of cool dogs. So this is how to use different shapes, and now that we have explored the different kind of shapes a little bit, we will have to figure out what shape fits our alligator the best. So I will figure that out and then come back with a sort of more fleshed out version. Well, right now he is non-existent, but I will play around with some shapes and then I will come right back and show you what I got.
So here is my first sort of stab at this guy, and he totally turned out differently than I had imagined. So it's totally okay if you start off by making your brainstorm and you just follow where the lines lead you. And so this guy, I tried to make his face sort of squarish, but to me he seems like a maybe you don't know if you were to trust this guy, and then he's a magician, and then I tried to he has some sort of shirt on, and I wanted him to play with cards. I want him to show that he has magical abilities, maybe to lure you in as an audience. And I was thinking of giving him a really, really big tail, but then he became this small guy, and I think that fits him very well. He's this small, fast, overly confident alligator guy. And then I was thinking, okay, a pet companion. What if he was standing on his pet companion turtle? It's not much of a turtle right now, but don't get discouraged. I will not. I won't. I don't get discouraged at this point because this is just a sketch. This is me trying to figure out the shapes of the character, and this doesn't have to look like anything. This is a very clean, rough sketch. Usually, it's much worse in the sense of there's many, many more lines, and I have to go in and sort of find the lines and be sort of like a sculptor in the sense of I have to find my figure, my character within all of these scribbles that I've made. So I've made this. This is my first rough sketch. This is me exploring the shapes of this character, and then I will go on to the next lesson, and I will meet you there.
So now is all about gathering inspiration. We have our mind map, we have the first few baby steps, and a sort of janky sketch of where we think we might want to go. That means that we have to sit down and collect references. When I'm at this stage when I create a character on my own, I like to go and just find a lot of images I think are really cool and spike my interest, and then it's sort of in the direction that I want to go with my character. For instance, in this example, I have a reference board software that I use on my iPad and on my computer, and I will link those two programs in the description. And also, just with the sketch and the brainstorm stage, don't feel like you have to find any particular images. It's really nice to go off of, we were talking about some different major subjects. Try starting with those. But I feel like when I collect references, it's very much Alice down the rabbit hole. You find one picture and you think it's really nice, and that picture links to another picture, and I like to go into Google. My Instagram feed is very much curated with the artists that I like and that I find inspiring, or Pinterest. Just make sure that you don't trace someone else's art. You don't claim anyone else's art as your own. We do the thing that's called stealing like an artist. You know what I mean? It's about we look at a lot of different cool things, and then we take it in through our eyeballs, and then in our brain there's like this sort of soup. We will be making something completely different. It's really important that you get inspired, that you feel your creative juices going, and you sort of feel like that you know in what direction you want to take your own design, but don't copy. Your reference board can be as big or as small as you like it, and in my own personal case, the bigger my creative projects are, the bigger my reference boards will be, and I sort of put them in different areas. So if I have this character that we're making, their personality, I find images or texts, passages of text, I put in there sort of in the same vicinity, in the same area. Got some facial features, a part of the outfit, the accessories, and maybe the poses. Because then I know when I'm working at the facial expressions or the personality, I go to that sort of space on my reference board, because my reference boards, like, I don't limit myself, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing. This is super personal, to feel it out. But I like to have more ideas and then kill my darlings and pick things apart and not use things than just not have enough pictures and enough inspiration. To me, it's very natural, and it's very much a feeling thing where I'm like, okay, I feel like I have enough inspiration to go on and sketch my next sketch. So when we're at this step and we have our, what we think is our finished reference boards, we are pretty much good to go. So if making a reference board, a vision board, is something that's very usual and normal in your creative process, then 2 big thumbs up for you. But if you're an artist out there who don't usually do it and want to go off of your own idea and what's in your mind, then I will recommend that you try it. Because the more that we fill our visual library, and our visual library is that box in our brains that's filled with stuff that we take out when we create art. The more that you fill your visual library, the more stuff you have in your mind to pull from. So the more reference boards you make, the more art you practice, the more art you make and finish, the more information to create art will be in your brain. You will store it for future art making. So make a reference board, have your reference board ready for you, and then we will move on to the next lesson. This is where I'll be talking about the rough sketch stage, what we do on paper, and then how we play around with it. We will be looking at what we got already gathered. We have our reference board, we have our brainstorming paper that we just did, and now it's all about starting to sketch. I will recommend for you not to just get stuck on one idea immediately, right off the bat. Play around with the lines and the shapes that you've already thrown down on paper, and look at your own sketch. If you don't get stuck on one idea too quickly, your sketch might even surprise you as you work with it. Go with your gut, follow what you like, follow the rabbit down the rabbit hole. We have an idea of what we want to make, and now isn't really the time for extreme detailing, but more for figuring out the bigger and larger shapes and ideas. I like to find the largest shapes first, and then go from large to smaller design choices and shape language. If there's something in my sketch I want to figure out, but can't quite crack in the moment, so I'll just take a break. In my experience, it's always a good idea to step away from your art, no matter what you're doing, at what stage you're in. If you make art for an hour or two, and then take a break, go put on some laundry, go grab a snack, a glass of water, make sure to stretch, and then after 5 to 10 minutes, 15 even, come back to your art project, your sketch, because you'll most likely see something that you didn't see before, because you took a break and you came back to it with fresh new eyes. A quick tip. The smart thing about doing your sketch in multiple sittings is that you let your mind rest in between. So even though you're doing something else and you're taking a break, your subconscious is still working out your character design, even as you go about your daily routine. So when you come back to it, you can take another fresh look at your sketch, and even your written mind map, and your reference board. And you might make connections and see some new ideas you didn't see there at first. And don't be scared of exploring something that seemingly don't fit into your original vision or your original version of what you thought you wanted. If you see a text section, a logo, or an image you like, then add it to your reference board. Enough references that make you feel inspired, but don't collect so many references that you overwhelm yourself. I personally just like to have fun. And to me, that's really where my North Star leads me most of the time. Sure, art can be challenging, and when it is, that
just sucks. But if you don't have fun with your art, then is it really worth doing in the first place? So I sketch very loosely. I also just erase. I just do what I feel like in this process and in this sketch right now. If I have a hard time finding a shape, I'll make sure to erase around it to help it stand out. That's why I don't really do a lot of different iterations. I play around with the sketch that I've got and the shapes, and I just pick what I think looks good. And then I find an end result after many lines and scribbles and erasing. Then I sit back with an end result I hopefully like. A quick tip. By sketching and erasing, you will be transforming a sketch. Much like building a form in a 3D space if you build with clay either on your computer or in real life. You can't really go back unless you do different iterations and different versions. I don't do that. I play around with one sketch until I like where it is and I keep working with it. But if it makes you feel more comfortable, then do different sort of changes to 5, 6, 7 sketches even that are just a little bit different. That way you can take a step back and you can look at all your sketches at once and then pick out what you like the most. It's really all about sketching and drawing until you feel like you have uncovered what you really like and you can see a clear direction of where you want to go with it. For me, it's very much a case of how temperamental my drawings are at the moment. Sometimes I sketch something out and I like it straight away, and sometimes it's just much harder to art, which leaves the drawing taking longer and longer to uncover. But I think of it like being an archaeologist. I have my little chisel, I have my little brush, and I just start by erasing a little bit, sketching a little bit, and then soon I'll start uncovering something. It's something new that I haven't drawn before, and it hasn't really existed before. So I'll recommend for you to not rush this process. You're doing great. Let it come to you naturally, and if you need to step away from it, do so. It will be right here for you when you feel like coming back to it. Don't get discouraged. If you feel that figuring out shapes and trying to get a hang of your own shape language is really tricky, then I suggest that you take a look at animated movies you might like, art magazines, and art books. I will be sure to write some suggestions down in the description below. Go see how other people are using their shapes in their work, and that will guide you to where you want to go with yours. Better yet, read an awesome comic with an artist that you really, really like. Now before we move on, it's important that you look at your rough sketch. Do you like what your rough sketch looks like? Is it what you had in mind when you first started your brainstorming of your character? Or are there some changes that you want to make, or a few parts that you don't quite agree with? Then change them. This is the time to do that. If you can draw it once, you can draw it again. Or if you reached this step in the process and you just don't like what you've done and you feel uninspired by what you created, then scrap it and start over. This is not a failure. If you don't like what you've made, it just means that you found a way not to do it. Then pause this video or go back to the beginning when this premiere is over and try again. Everything is experience. It's only a failed attempt if you stop trying altogether. We have a messy sketch of something, and I oftentimes find it so messy that if anyone else saw it, they can't quite make out what I'm drawing. With this sketch, it's all about shaping. And this is a very natural stage of refinement for me. And honestly, it's that simple and that hard. You sit down and you try to work out what you want your drawing to look like, and follow that gut feeling and the intuition you have. You keep your reference board close to look at when you need to get inspired just that little bit. So right now, finalizing your sketch, it's all about discovering and shaping your drawing until you're satisfied with the results of your refined sketch. It can take several sketches, and even more sometimes, to feel out the sketch and figure out where I want it to go. So feel yours out. Going from the rough sketch you've made to this sketch, and several in between the first sketch you've made and your final one, it can take as many passes and as many sketches as you feel comfortable with.
So you have a finished sketch. That's great. But now what? Well, it's really up to you. From here, I personally like to ink it on my iPad as well. I go ahead, ink it, and then, yeah, it's very much a mood sort of feel, whether I want to paint it digitally, want to print it out and transfer it, or just let it sit and just go on to the next project. From here, I could take my finished sketch, print it out, and transfer it on my light table. I have also done it against many a Windows way back when light tables wasn't really a thing. You could transfer it just by hand, looking at your thing, and transfer it onto a canvas and then paint it. All of this is really up to you, what you want to do with your art from now. But this is really the step where I let all of you students go, because you sort of made it. You took an idea, and you made a brainstorm, and you gathered all your references, and this is a demonstration, and this art course is for demonstration's sake, so I hope you take something from this and go and practice. So, doing a rough sketch, and the second sketch, and maybe a third and a fourth sketch after that, it just takes time. It can take a lot of time, or it can take, as little or as much time as you want to put into it. So when you sit down and follow my steps in my process, what I've suggested, all of this video has been just a pure video of suggestions. I hope you sit with a finished sketch of an original character. At least that's the goal. And a quick tip, you don't always have to bust out finished artwork after finished artwork after finished artwork. That's what, as an artist, you can really easily get that imprinted into your mind, because we have social media now. And it's a great tool if you use it as a tool, but it can also be an overwhelming platform. So I suggest what I do a lot of offhand sketches in my sketchbook, and then I go and paint something, and then I make time to explore as well. I like to have a finished, curated portfolio, but that's just not the case. So go ahead and practice, and if you like your sketch, then take it away and make something really cool out of it. But if you just had fun and just like to sit and sketch original character designs in your own sketchbooks, that's equally as valid. And before I let you go, I have a few thoughts on art. Remember, you can't do anything on an empty stomach. And it's sort of a metaphor for what I want to say, that if you don't feel inspired and you haven't filled up your brain canisters, as I like to, I envision the canisters over the Sim people when you play Sims 4. If you haven't filled up your canister and it's gone green, then you will probably find it a lot harder to create art, because that's what I do. It's so hard to write or draw or paint when I've been off the wagon for a while and haven't done it. So I make sure every time I feel my canister go less and less and less green, I find my favorite comics. I look at my favorite art. I let myself be inspired. Sometimes I watch movies or TV shows or read books that I don't usually do, just to go outside of my comfort zone and my usual lane for just a little while to see if I can get inspired by something that I wouldn't necessarily think that I could get inspired by. So remember to fill your own cup before you bust out or try to bust out a lot of cool art. Because it will be cooler if you take a lot of cool things in. And on that note, I recommend that you just follow the rabbit, go down the rabbit hole, and just go in the direction where you find joy and that inspires you. Because that inspiration works also, excuse me, as creating art. I have heard it with writers, when you read about writing, it's called zero writing. So I've sort of taken that advice and then called it zero arting. So when you don't art, but you read about art and you look at pictures and go to a museum or whatever you like to do to spark your interest, then that's zero arting, and that is just as important to the process as sitting down with a pencil and paper. A topic that's very discussed, and I'm sure if you go on YouTube you can find a load, so many videos on this topic. I'm going to talk and just touch on art style. And I wasn't looking for my art style, and it took 26 years, and then my art style found me. The thought that we have to sit down as artists and struggle every day and draw for 10 hours a day, you will just hurt yourself. So I would suggest you not to do that. But when it comes to art style, I like to say, you don't draw a single tree and then find your art style. You draw 100 different trees. And then you take a little bit from tree 50. And then you take a little bit from the branches of the tree of number 64. And then slowly you build your own, I like to call it your own font as an artist. You begin to recognize the line shape and the line weight and the shapes that you like to use in your own art. And I have been struggling with it as well, and then I left it alone, and then I just did art for fun. I started creating characters, and that's very much fun that I'm teaching this art course to you. I just wanted to make cool characters. I love watching animation, reading comics, and creating characters that's just solid, and you look at them and they're just great. They're just chef's kiss. And I sat down with a new sketchbook and I just did it, and I had fun with it. And I think sitting down and enjoying the process and having fun with something can lead to a much better, note that I said can. It can lead to a much better outcome than when you sit down and say, I want to make cool art and I want to post it 3 times a day on my Instagram. If that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. Like, all props to you. But I don't draw every day. Right now, if I have the time as a student and a writer, and just a normal human being that likes to just chill, I draw twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, just with life going on. And that doesn't make me less of an artist. I actually find drawing less, I end up making cooler art, you know? And I want to suggest that you don't try to pressure yourself into do art either, or any other hobby you have. Because if it's on hobby level, it's allowed to be ugly. You don't have to show anybody. You can just be your own art friend and do cool art. You don't have to post about it at all. But if you want to draw every day, start from a place of fun in your stomach. Start from a place of just genuinely wanting to create. I find when I create art or create whatever, when I build something, I want to build something more. That the more I do it, the more I tend to want to do it. But start from the place and the perspective of having fun with it, and then see where it takes you. That's very much this art course and the process of this art course and my process. I was going to do a sheep night. It turned into an alligator shaman boy whose companion is a toad, and he has a jar of flowers. And that's all. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for, if you're still watching, for watching the whole thing through. It took a month of prep and planning, and I've been every team member on the team for a full month. I hope you have learned something, you have heard something you might not have known when you sat down and began this art course. And I will just suggest to keep exploring. Don't stop being curious, because I had such a great time teaching you, making this art event, and I think I might need a nap when this thing have premiered. I hope you have the greatest time. Go ahead and make the art that you want to make, and see if your art don't speak to you, and just follow it down the rabbit hole and see where it takes you. If you start from a place of fun, even though you've been drawing for 20 years or you've been drawing for 5, it doesn't really matter. Keep practicing, keep being curious, and thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a great one. Bye.